I have recently revisited and finished the damage formula for the game. What began as simply incoming damage being subtracted out from the target's hit points, I now have something that turned into something more robust and far better suited for what I needed. For the longest time, I was just leaving it as hit points, losing whatever damage comes in because I didn't have enough pieces of armor or enemies or the bells and whistles needed to really work on a formula and make it balanced. What I have now is this. The total damage is equal to the floor of the incoming damage, subtracting the target's defense multiplied by a global modifier, and then all of that is then multiplied by the target's resistance and a critical hit variable that may be one or greater. Now, before I go any further with this, you might be wondering why I've decided to make a video about something as dry as the damage formula. And it turns out that I don't know. I'm really compelled to talk about this. But one of the big factors is the resistance section that I'll talk about in a little bit is different and weird and complicated. And I think I got something that handles that pretty well. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really compelled to talk about this. And so I apologize, sort of. All right, so first we have the incoming damage. That is just the raw damage coming from whatever source is damaging you, and that's, pretty much what it is. The next bit there is your defense multiplied by a global modifier, and this is something that I kind of lifted from an idea in Terraria or Terraria, if you want to be fancy about it, where different levels of difficulty that you choose to play the game on have a direct influence on how effective your defense is. In Terraria, the higher level of difficulty, like on Master Mode, your defense actually is 1-to-1 damage reduction, and I think on like Classic, 4 points of defense, it only reduces damage by one or something. So anyway, realistically, that global dot defense modifier really exists just so I can be indecisive about how much I want defense to influence the damage formula. I like the idea of defense not directly, 1 point of defense won't directly equal 1 point of damage reduction, but I'm not sure exactly how I want that to be balanced. So, by leaving this modifier there in the formula, I can tweak it pretty easily without putting too much thought into the actual formula structure. So, it's a thing. And really quick for anybody wondering, this is how I handle the critical hit chance. There's nothing surprising there. It's just a random number, 1 through 100, being compared to the incoming critical chance, which is going to be a number on the attack, 1 through 100, compares the roll, applies the critical modifier. If not, critical modifier stays at 1.0, so it does nothing to the damage. And now we've arrived at resistances. This is the most complicated part of the formula, and it was the inspiration for this entire video because as I said about this, formula for damage, I thought about how resistances could be applied and calculated and rolled in, and I wasn't really sure how to do it. So I ended up doing a few different things and kept changing what I was doing and eventually settled on I have ended up storing all the resistances for characters and monsters or whatever in two arrays. The first one that's called resistances is an array of ones, and each of those are damage multipliers for melee, ranged, magic, normal, smash, stab, slash, fire elements, everything that can affect how great or less damage will do to something. I also have a second array which represents statuses and your resistance to those. The reasons that those are zeros is because those are not multipliers of damage, but percentage of resistance. Now, the most important thing to note here is that I use enums with keys that represent specific positions on each resistance array. And the way they're named is very important because incoming damage types and incoming status attacks all have string names associated with them that match these damage keys in a case sensitive manner. And here's where all this takes effect in the damage calculation function. The first thing I want to say is that with the enums that I used above, while each of those represent a numerical value that corresponds to a place on an array, you can also get the string values for each enum by accessing them in the way you would access keys in a dictionary. All right, so with that in mind, let's say we're the player and we get hit by a melee weapon that's an axe or something. We're going to be able to pull melee from the axe and put that into the incoming attack type variable. And our resistance will then be multiplied by our resistance array, the position or the value we have in the position that corresponds to melee in the damage keys enum. And by using damage keys dot get and passing in melee, it'll search the enum that we did for melee. And when it finds it, it's going to then be able to give us that positional value. And that positional value is then passed to the resistances array, and that's the value in the in the resistances array that we're multiplying into our resistance, because that was easy to say. Now, I don't claim for this to be the best way or even the right way to go about doing things, but I am putting all the code up on the screen now in case anyone else happens to find any use for it or wants to do something similar or even has some improvements for it. This is just something I came across while doing a lot of, guessing and searching for how I can make this easier. I did export those resistance arrays so that I can edit them on each individual enemy. Even with that, I still just see an array of ones and zeros and have to reference the code to see what order things go in. So that's not perfect, but this is what I have. And, I'm hoping it's useful to somebody. I'm kind of excited I got this to work in the way that I wanted it to, and it's not a ton of code. So it's, yeah, I'm kind of proud of it, I guess, even though someone's going to tell me I'm wrong, I'm sure. But again, if this is helpful for you or anybody, by all means, use this to your heart's content. All right, so this was kind of a weird video on a topic that's generally uninteresting unless you're, a weirdo like myself. Next up, I do plan on doing a video on the entire process of creating an enemy from the creation of the sprite to implementation into the game. I have a lot of enemies to make still, and it might be a fun video. Potentially. Who knows? We'll find out. Till the next time then. Yeah.